Good morning, everyone. Life is unpredictable. Some days the sun shines brightly on our path and everything feels effortless, but other days storms roll in, unexpected challenges, disappointments, or losses that can leave us feeling overwhelmed. In those moments, staying positive isn't just difficult, it can feel impossible. Positivity is often misunderstood as the relentless pursuit of happiness, a forced smile in the face of pain, or an outright denial of life's difficulties. But true positivity, the kind that sustains you when life gets tough, begins with something far more foundational: honesty. It starts with the courage to acknowledge your emotions, to sit with them, and to understand them before you can rise above them. This is the first and most critical step in cultivating a resilient spirit, because you cannot heal what you refuse to confront. When hardship strikes, whether it's a personal loss, a professional setback, or an unexpected crisis, the immediate reaction is often to suppress the discomfort. We distract ourselves with busyness, numb the pain with temporary fixes, or plaster on a brave face because we fear that admitting struggle is a sign of weakness. But the opposite is true. Denying your emotions doesn't make them disappear, it buries them deeper where they fester and resurface later with greater intensity. Real strength lies in the willingness to say, "This hurts, I'm disappointed, I'm afraid." Only then can you begin to process and move forward. Consider grief, for example. When you lose someone or something dear to you, the healthiest path forward isn't to pretend you're fine or to rush through the sorrow. It's to allow yourself to feel the weight of that loss, to cry, to reminisce, to sit in the silence of what once was. This isn't negativity, it's human nature. Even the Bible, a text filled with promises of hope, dedicates an entire book, Lamentations, to raw, unfiltered grief. It acknowledges the pain before pointing to redemption. Similarly, in your own life, you must grant yourself permission to experience the full spectrum of emotions. Suppressing them only delays the healing process. Honesty with yourself also means recognizing when your thoughts are spiraling into destructive patterns. It's one thing to feel sadness, it's another to let that sadness define you. For instance, there's a difference between thinking, "I'm devastated by this failure," and "I'm a failure." The first is an honest acknowledgement of emotion. The second is a false narrative that can cripple your progress. When you're truthful about your feelings, you create the space to challenge and reframe them. You can say, "Yes, this hurts, but it doesn't mean I'm defeated. This is a moment in time, not my entire story." This principle is echoed in psychology through practices like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which teaches that identifying and naming your emotions reduces their power over you. When you articulate, "I'm feeling anxious about the future," you're no longer drowning in an unnamed dread. You're holding it at arm's length, examining it, and deciding how to respond. This is the birthplace of resilience. Moreover, honesty fosters connection. When you're open about your struggles, you give others permission to do the same. Isolation thrives in pretense, but community is built on vulnerability. Think of the time someone's raw honesty, perhaps a friend admitting they're struggling, or a public figure sharing their setbacks, made you feel less alone. Your transparency can do the same for others. It's a reminder that no one is immune to hardship, and there's no shame in needing support. But here's the crucial distinction. Honesty isn't the same as dwelling. Acknowledging pain is the first step. Wallowing in it is a choice to stay stuck. Once you've named your emotions, the next step is to decide how to move forward. This is where positivity truly begins, not as a mask, but as a conscious decision to seek light despite the darkness. It's the difference between saying, "I'm heartbroken and I don't know how to move on," and "I'm heartbroken, but I believe healing is possible." This approach aligns with the wisdom of ancient philosophies and modern psychology alike. The Stoics, for example, taught the importance of distinguishing between what we can and cannot control. By honestly assessing our emotions, something within our control, we reclaim agency over our responses. Similarly, mindfulness practices encourage observing thoughts without judgment, allowing them to pass like clouds in the sky. These frameworks all point to the same truth: Positivity isn't the absence of pain, it's the courage to face it head on, and the faith to grow through. In practical terms, practicing this kind of honesty might look like journaling your unfiltered thoughts at the end of a hard day, confiding in a trusted friend without sugarcoating your feelings, or simply pausing to ask yourself, what am I truly feeling right now? These small acts of self-awareness create a foundation for genuine resilience. They prevent emotions from ruling you subconsciously and allow you to navigate challenges with clarity. Ultimately, the path to staying positive in tough times isn't about bypassing pain. It's about meeting it with honesty, processing it with grace, and then choosing to rise. When you stop fighting the reality of your emotions, you unlock the ability to transform. This is the paradox at the heart of true positivity. Only by acknowledging the storm can you learn to dance in the rain. When life becomes difficult, it's easy to feel like everything is spinning out of control. Unexpected challenges, setbacks, and crises can leave us overwhelmed, as if we're caught in a current too strong to fight. But the key to maintaining positivity in tough times isn't about controlling the uncontrollable, it's about redirecting your focus to what you can influence. This shift in perspective is transformative, because while you may not be able to change your circumstances, you always have power over how you respond to them. The human mind naturally gravitates toward problems, often fixating on things beyond our reach, the past, other people's choices, or external events we can't alter. This tendency drains energy and creates a sense of helplessness. But resilience emerges when we consciously pivot our attention to the areas where we do have agency. Think of it like sailing. You can't control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. Similarly, in life, you may not control the storm, but you can choose how to navigate through it. One of the most powerful things you can control is your attitude. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, observed this firsthand in the darkest of circumstances. He wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing. The last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." Even in situations of extreme suffering, Frankl found that those who focused on their inner freedom, their ability to choose their mindset, were more likely to endure. This principle applies universally. When faced with a job loss, for example, you can't undo the past, but you can decide whether to view it as a dead end or a redirection. Will you respond with bitterness or with curiosity about what new opportunities might emerge? Your attitude shapes your reality far more than the event itself. Beyond attitude, your actions, no matter how small, are another area firmly within your control. When challenges arise, it's easy to fall into paralysis, waiting for conditions to improve before taking steps forward. But progress rarely begins with perfect circumstances. It begins with small, deliberate choices. If you're facing financial stress, you might not be able to erase debt overnight, but you can create a budget or explore side income. If you're dealing with a health issue, you can't always control the diagnosis, but you can commit to daily habits that support your well-being. These actions may seem insignificant in the moment, but they accumulate into momentum. Each small step reinforces your sense of agency, counteracting the helplessness that adversity tries to impose. Another critical area of focus is your perspective. Adversity often narrows our vision, making it hard to see beyond the immediate struggle. But by consciously reframing your perspective, you can uncover meaning or growth, even in hardship. For instance, a failed project isn't just a failure, it's a lesson in resilience, a chance to refine your skills, or a stepping stone to something better. This isn't about toxic positivity or denying pain. It's about recognizing that challenges often contain hidden gifts. The Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold, embodies this idea beautifully. The cracks aren't hidden, they're highlighted, becoming part of the object's story and beauty. Similarly, your struggles don't have to be erased to be valuable. They can become part of what makes you stronger and wiser. It's also important to recognize that focusing on the controllables requires intentional filtering of external noise. In difficult times, well-meaning people or even the media may amplify fear, doubt, or negativity. While you can't control their words, you can control what you internalize. This might mean setting boundaries with pessimistic individuals, limiting exposure to anxiety-inducing news, or curating input that encourages and educates rather than drains. Your mental space is precious. Guard it fiercely. Practically applying this principle starts with a simple but powerful exercise. Divide a sheet of paper into two columns. On one side, list the aspects of your situation you can't control, e.g., a company layoff, a global crisis, someone else's behavior. On the other, list what you can control, your daily habits, your effort, your self-talk. Then deliberately shift your energy from the first column to the second. This act alone is empowering. It moves you from passive victimhood to active participation in your own life. Ultimately, the storms of life test not our ability to control the uncontrollable, but our willingness to take responsibility for our corner of the world. When you focus on your attitude, actions, and perspective, you reclaim power that adversity tries to steal. This doesn't mean the journey becomes easy, but it does become navigable. You begin to see yourself not as a leaf blown by the wind, but as a tree rooted, adaptable, and capable of bending without breaking. And that shift, more than any external change, is what allows positivity to endure even when life is hard. The people we surround ourselves with act as mirrors reflecting back at us either hope or despair, strength or weakness, possibility or limitation. When life becomes difficult, this truth becomes even more pronounced. The voices we allow into our inner circle either lift us above the storm or pull us deeper into. Human beings are wired for connection, and the energy of those closest to us seeps into our subconscious, shaping our thoughts, emotions, and ultimately our ability to persevere. This is why intentionally cultivating relationships with those who encourage rather than drain, who speak life rather than death, becomes not just helpful, but essential for maintaining positivity during tough seasons. Consider how different interactions leave you. After spending time with certain people, you may feel energized, inspired, and ready to take on challenges. These are the hope givers, the ones who see the best in you even when you can't see it yourself, who remind you of your strength when you feel weak, and who help you find light in darkness. Conversely, other interactions may leave you emotionally exhausted, filled with doubt, or stuck in cycles of negativity. These are the energy drainers, those who constantly complain, criticize without offering solutions, or reinforce limiting beliefs about what's possible. The difference between these two types of relationships isn't just noticeable, it's transformative, especially when navigating adversity. The science behind this phenomenon is clear. Research in social psychology confirms that emotions are contagious. Just as we unconsciously mimic others' facial expressions and body language, we also catch their emotional states. This means that surrounding yourself with chronically negative individuals literally rewires your brain toward pessimism, while engaging with positive, solution-oriented people fosters resilience. Studies on social support during hardships, from job loss to health crises, consistently show that those with strong, encouraging networks recover faster and maintain better mental health. Your circle doesn't just influence your mood, it impacts your ability to cope and ultimately to overcome. This principle extends beyond self-talk to how we discuss our struggles with others. Venting can be therapeutic, but chronic complaint without resolution traps us in cycles of victimhood. There's a stark contrast between saying, "My boss is unbearable, I'll never succeed here," which fixates on the problem, and "My boss is difficult, so I'm developing strategies to improve our communication," which focuses on agency. The latter approach, while acknowledging hardship, directs energy toward solutions. Social media amplifies this dynamic. Publicly declaring "my life is a mess" invites others to confirm that narrative, while sharing navigating a tough season but growing through it invites support without cementing despair. Practical application begins with awareness, noticing habitual phrases that undermine resilience. Common culprits include absolutes like "always," "things always go wrong for me," or "never," "I'll never recover," which distort reality. Replacing them with nuanced language, "this is hard right now, but I've overcome challenges before," introduces hope. Journaling exercises can help. For 1 week, document stressful moments alongside the words you used to describe them, then rewrite those narratives with a constructive lens. Over time, this rewires thought patterns. Another powerful tool is creating personal declarations tailored to your struggles, short present tense statements like "I have the wisdom to handle this," or "every challenge is making me wiser." Repeated daily, these act like mental armor against negativity. The environment also plays a role. Just as secondhand smoke harms lungs, secondhand speech, constant exposure to others' negativity, pollutes mental space. This doesn't mean avoiding authentic sharing, but being selective about chronic pessimists. Conversely, surrounding yourself with those who speak vision and possibility, as discussed in Keynote 3, reinforces constructive language habit. Even the media we consume matters. Podcasts, books, or music filled with empowering messages subtly shape our inner dialogue. Ultimately, the practice of speaking life is a discipline, not a denial of pain. It's the choice to acknowledge a storm while insisting this won't drown me. When a parent battling illness says, treatment is grueling but I'm fighting for more moments with my family, they're not ignoring suffering, they're anchoring themselves to purpose. When an entrepreneur declares, this setback is teaching me what my business truly needs, they're not pretending failure doesn't sting, they're ensuring it serves them. Words are the architects of our resilience. We either build fortresses with them or prisons. In tough times, what we say becomes what we see, so we must choose those words as carefully as we would the foundations of a house meant to weather every storm. Life's greatest trials often arrive unannounced. The sudden job loss, the unexpected diagnosis, the betrayal that shakes your foundation. In these moments when the ground beneath you crumbles, it's natural to ask, why is this happening to me? The anguish is real, but hidden within that question lies a dangerous assumption that suffering is meaningless, a cruel twist of fate with no purpose beyond causing pain. But if we challenge that assumption, what if every struggle, no matter how devastating, contained within it the seeds of transformation? This is not about romanticizing hardship or pretending that grief should be welcomed with open arms. It's about recognizing that the most difficult chapters of our lives often become the crucibles where our deepest strength and wisdom are forged. History's most resilient figures, from Nelson Mandela to Malala Yousafzai, didn't emerge from their ordeals despite their suffering, but in some profound way because of Mandela's 27 years in prison could have broken him. Instead, they became the furnace that purified his vision for reconciliation. Malala's near-fatal shooting could have silenced her. Instead, it amplified her voice for girls' education worldwide. Their stories reveal an uncomfortable but liberating truth. The obstacles we desperately wish to avoid often carry within them the exact lessons we need to fulfill our potential. The Japanese concept of kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold, beautifully illustrates this principle. The breaks aren't hidden, they're illuminated, becoming the most valuable part of the object's history. Similarly, our fractures and failures, when embraced and understood, can become sources of unexpected beauty and strength. This perspective shift doesn't happen automatically. It requires what psychologist Carl Rogers called the curious paradox, that we only change when we first accept where we are. Resistance to pain often amplifies it, like struggling in quicksand. But when we stop fighting reality and instead ask, what is this here to teach me? We open ourselves to growth. Consider the caterpillar's metamorphosis, from its limited earthbound existence through the terrifying dissolution of its form in the chrysalis to its emergence as a creature capable of flight. The caterpillar doesn't know about wings while it's dissolving, just as we can't always see the purpose in our pain while we're in it, but the process is no less transformative for being invisible. Modern neuroscience confirms this ancient wisdom. Studies on post-traumatic growth reveal that a significant percentage of people who endure major crises, serious illness, loss, natural disasters, report positive psychological changes afterward. They speak of deeper relationships, renewed appreciation for life, personal strength they didn't know they possessed, and spiritual development. This doesn't mean trauma is desirable or that everyone automatically grows from it. The key factor is how the experience is processed and framed. Those who find meaning in adversity are far more likely to experience this growth than those who remain stuck in why me thinking. Practical application begins with reframing the questions we ask in tough times. Instead of why is this happening to me, try what is this preparing me? Instead of when will this pain end, ask how is this pain changing me? This subtle shift doesn't deny the reality of suffering, but transforms it from a meaningless punishment to a purposeful journey. Journaling can be a powerful tool here, writing about how challenges are shaping your character, what they're teaching you about your priorities, and how they're expanding your capacity for empathy. Over time, this practice builds what researcher Angela Duckworth calls grit, the combination of passion and perseverance that predicts success far more reliably than talent alone. The workplace provides compelling examples of this principle in action. Many successful entrepreneurs trace their resilience and innovation directly to early failures. Steve Jobs' ousting from Apple in 1985 seemed like a career-ending disaster, yet he later called it the best thing that could have ever happened, the period when he developed skills and perspectives that would revolutionize multiple industries upon his return. Similarly, J. Rowling's numerous rejections before publishing Harry Potter didn't just precede her success, they fueled the determination and humility that made her eventual triumph meaningful. These stories remind us that setbacks aren't just obstacles to overcome on the path to success, they're often the very experiences that make us capable of handling success when it comes. On a spiritual level, virtually all wisdom traditions affirm that suffering has purpose. Buddhism teaches that pain is inevitable, but suffering comes from attachment, and that liberation emerges through understanding this distinction. Christianity presents the paradox of the cross, that death leads to resurrection. These aren't abstract philosophies, but lived realities observable in daily life. The heartbreak that teaches us what real love requires, the failure that reveals our true priorities, the limitation that forces us to innovate. Even in nature, we see this principle. Forests need periodic fires to clear undergrowth and release seeds muscles must tear to grow stronger. The key isn't to seek out suffering, but to recognize its transformative potential when it arrives. This mindset doesn't make pain hurt less, but it does make it mean more. When we view challenges as random punishments, we remain victims. When we recognize them as preparation, we become students. The same event, a layoff, an illness, a rejection, can either embitter or empower us, depending on the meaning we assign it. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, wrote that when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. In that change lies our growth, our freedom, and ultimately, our ability to not just endure life's storms, but to be transformed by them into versions of ourselves we couldn't have become any other way. Resilience is not a trait you're born with, it's a choice you make every single day, especially when life feels heaviest. That moment when you wake up to another difficult morning and have to decide whether to pull the covers over your head or face the day, that's where resilience lives, in the small, seemingly insignificant decisions that accumulate over time to either build your capacity to withstand storms or leave you vulnerable to being knocked over by the slightest breeze. The misconception many people have is that resilience is about dramatic acts of courage during major crises. While those moments matter, true resilience is actually forged in the mundane, the daily choice to get up when you're tired, to try again after disappointment, or to find one reason to hope when 100 things suggest despair. Consider the human body as a metaphor. Physical strength doesn't appear overnight. It's the result of consistent training where muscles are stressed just beyond their comfort zone, leading them to repair and grow stronger. Emotional and mental resilience work the same way. Every time you choose to process a difficult emotion rather than avoid it, every time you reframe a negative thought, every time you reach out for support instead of isolating yourself, you're doing the equivalent of a rep at the gym for your resilience muscle. This explains why some people seem to handle major crises with relative grace. They've been practicing resilience in small ways all along. They've built what psychologists call resilience reserves through daily habits that others might overlook as insignificant. The power of choice in building resilience becomes especially clear when examining how people respond to similar adversities differently. Two individuals might experience the same setback, say, a business failure, with one becoming paralyzed by shame, while the other pivots toward new opportunities. The difference often lies not in their circumstances, but in their conditioned responses to difficulty. The latter has likely practiced what mindset researcher Carol Dweck calls the growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed through effort. This mindset transforms obstacles into feedback rather than failure. When someone with this perspective encounters a setback, their brain automatically starts asking, "What can I learn from this?" instead of "Why does this always happen to me?" The critical insight here is that both responses are choices, albeit ones that often feel automatic because they've been rehearsed over time through habitual thinking patterns. Language plays a crucial role in these daily resilience choices, as explored in Keynote 4, but equally important are our behavior rituals. Navy SEALs, renowned for their mental toughness, don't rely on motivation, they rely on system. They practice stress inoculation through controlled exposure to difficulties, which trains them to remain functional amid chaos. While most of us don't need SEAL-level training, we can apply the same principle through micro-practices, starting the day with a mindfulness routine to center ourselves, scheduling worry time to contain anxious thoughts, or creating if-then plans for stressful scenarios. If I feel overwhelmed at work, then I'll take 5 minutes to breathe and prioritize. These rituals work because they transfer resilience from being something you need to consciously summon to becoming an automatic response wired into your nervous system. Social connections serve as another pivotal arena for daily resilience choices. Isolation is both a symptom and amplifier of distress, while connection acts as a buffer against life's blows. However, reaching out when struggling often requires overcoming the instinct to withdraw, a choice that feels counterintuitive in moments of pain. Research on trauma recovery shows that the single most common factor among those who develop PTSD isn't the severity of the trauma itself, but whether they go through it feeling alone or supported. This underscores why choosing vulnerability, the courage to say, "I'm not okay" to someone safe, isn't weakness but a strategic resilience-building move. Similarly, choosing to be present for others in their struggles creates reciprocal bonds that strengthen everyone involved. The cumulative effect of these daily choices creates what psychologists call resilience scaffolding, an internal structure that holds you up when external circumstances try to knock you down. This scaffolding consists of multiple components: cognitive, how you interpret events; emotional, how you process feelings; physical, how you care for your body; and spiritual, how you connect to meaning. Neglecting any one area creates vulnerability, which is why holistic self-care isn't indulgence, but resilience maintenance. The person who makes time for adequate sleep, nutritious food, and movement during stressful periods isn't avoiding reality, they're ensuring they have the biological resources to face challenges effectively. Perhaps the most transformative aspect of understanding resilience as a choice is the empowerment it brings. If resilience were an innate trait, those who consider themselves not strong enough would be doomed in difficult times. But framing it as a series of decisions means anyone can cultivate it, starting right now with the next choice they make. That might look like choosing to turn off doom scrolling and read something uplifting instead, deciding to write down 3 things you're grateful for before bed, or simply taking the next small step forward when every fiber of you wants to quit. These choices might seem insignificant in isolation, but like drops of water filling a bucket, they eventually create the momentum that carries you through storms you never thought you could weather. The journey of resilience ultimately brings us back to a fundamental truth about human nature: we are far more adaptable than we predict during comfortable times. Studies on affective forecasting show that people consistently overestimate how long negative events will affect them, a phenomenon called immune neglect, where we overlook our psychological immune system's ability to help us recover and find meaning. This isn't to minimize real pain, but to highlight that within each of us lies an innate capacity to heal, grow, and eventually thrive again, if we choose to engage with that process one decision at a time. The ship doesn't sink because water surrounds it, it sinks if water gets in. Similarly, resilience isn't about preventing storms in life, but about choosing day by day, moment by moment, not to let the storm inside define you.